Scooby-Doo, bee-bop-a-doo, Scooby-Doo, Scooby-Doo, bee-bop-a-doo.
On this episode of the History of the Chorus podcast with Curtis and Josh, we continue our look at the band known as Zayo. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at IsSurvivedByPro for news and the latest episode postings. And make sure to subscribe to the show, leave us a 5-star review, and write us a comment on YouTube or whatever podcast service you're using. Make sure to check us out on TikTok and give us a follow at IsSurvivedByProductions. And if you'd like to see us do some live streams, leave us a comment or tweet us the keyword stream. Now, without further ado, let's start the show.
The devil is in Atlanta, army surrounded.
I desire the end, the touch of Armageddon. This world encased in flames, bodies lie beneath fallen kingdoms. I walk on fallen kingdoms. I desire the end. I desire the new beginning. Welcome back to the History of the Chorus podcast, sponsored by the Church of the Seventh Track, where each and every episode we are taking a look at a band from the core genre. I'm Curtis, and with me as always, this guy over here, this little bow wow dee dee doo 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 guy named Josh. What's up, Josh?
What's up? I don't know if you know, but that's all they have. That's all they have. It's just bound out, went in and out, went in.
Yeah, I don't even remember where that was from, an older episode, but I can't remember which one it was. I was listening to it not too long ago, trying to get ready for after hours episode. I was like, that's pretty funny. I'm gonna have to keep that one. But I don't remember who it was. We were just like, yeah, they need more. I think you said they need more bound out. Why they need down? What they do? Just like, okay. Yeah, I cannot remember who it was though.
Well, and that comes from a Veil of Maya song.
Oh, that's okay. Then that's who it was. Then Veil of Maya.
Okay.
Yeah.
They had a song like that. I can't remember who was talking about them, but they're talking about, Gent, and like all they have is just bound out, wearing it out. So they use like the clip from that like interview, and then right after that, then the riff that they play is that exact riff that he was like making fun of, Yeah.
Nice. Cool, man.
I think it's Straight from the Path does that too. I like when bands do that, when they like throw some shade at somebody and they take the actual like interview and put it in the song.
Right.
Straight from the Path has one that's about who was it? Attack Attack, I think. And they were talking about how they belong on the hardcore scene because they're like, we have pink and purple in our logo, but like it's just a logo, and people come out and see us and see that we're like really heavy. Like it's so bad.
And Straight for the Path did that.
Yeah.
They put that into what song was that?
I'll let you know. It was off of one after Lighthouse. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head.
Okay.
But love those diss tracks. Everybody loves a good diss track.
Everybody likes a nice little diss track, man. Cool. All right, let's dive on into what we listened to this week. Josh, would you care to start us off?
Yeah, are you just going to tell me again, or do you have a...
No, I do have stuff. I did my homework this time.
Not
sure what happened last time.
So I really just split my time between these two albums, especially just the last few days. But Story So Far, I don't know if you're very familiar with them, but they came, I think, I want to say first album was like 2010 or 11 maybe. the first like full length here. They have a shorter album. I wouldn't call it an EP, but there's not maybe even 10 tracks on it.
Okay.
And then they do have an EP that's before that, but this was the first one that like I feel like most people consider this to be their first real album.
Yeah.
Under Soil and Dirt. Really good pop punk band, and it's like kind of a I don't know, it's kind of a different pop punk. A lot of people compare it to like Mom Jeans, but I don't know. It's different. For me, they're kind of in a class of their own.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I'm another one of those bands that like, like Straight from the Path, that I saw their first run out and they were, nobody then.
Yeah.
Was so blown away by them at the show that like I had to grab a CD and yeah, they've just been killing it since. But I've got the first one over here on my right, and then on my left I've got this is oh man, I did this
Oh,
twice.
did he mess up? What'd you do?
Yeah, go ahead and show me yours real quick.
Okay. Okay, so we'll start with the two you probably know, or at least you should know. You got Under Oath, Define the Grade Line. Classic. Classic.
Classic.
That's a classic one I used in my workouts. Throw in the background. It's pretty good.
Okay.
And then I
What
was feeling
I gotta
good.
know. What
Go ahead.
is your what's your favorite track on Define the Great Line? Big question, I know, but
Man, I think casting a thin shadow, dude, is that just gets me so hyped.
okay.
Oh man, but it's so difficult to be like, yeah, that's my one, because it's such a good album from front to back, because everything just flows so well together.
Right.
But I guess if I had a gun to my head, I would probably say Casting a Thin Shadow.
Okay.
You know, right above that, you got Manchester Orchestra's "Mean Everything to Nothing." Is that your favorite album by them,
Yes.
or at least the one that you're really most familiar with, or whatever? I guess you
Yeah,
could
it's
say.
my most familiar for sure. So I mean there
Yeah.
could be another one that
Well, to me,
is better for me, but
yeah, I don't. I mean, I don't know if I want to say it's my favorite one. I don't really know if I have like a favorite Manchester because they're all so good to me. But Mean Everything to Nothing is a really good one to me because that's where he's very rough in his vocals. He does a lot of like yell screaming, like cracking your voice screaming.
yeah.
And there's a lot of emotion into this album. Of course, there's a lot of background of, he just got married and his marriage wasn't great and he's very frustrated with that stuff. And so there was a lot of emotion poured into that album and all those songs on there too. The big album here with the little bear on it, bleeding, I guess, roots into the moon or something. I don't know. It's a post rock band. It's called Feed Me to the Waves. And the other band, bottom right corner, is another post rock band. Also, it's called Thought Trials. I can't remember what the album is called for Feed Me to Waves. Thought Trials is Full of Sound and Fury, signifying nothing. Both those bands are really like guitar driven, very atmospheric. They're pretty good. So if you're into that, check that out. And then this
Are
one up in the top.
they
Go ahead.
are they just instrumentals?
Yes, just instrumental post rock. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about
Um,
have you talked about Before the Garden, whatever that is?
Not yet. I was just about to say
Okay.
that. So that's
Okay, cool.
so I was feeling my hip hop roots, man. Some little hip hop this week. This is an album called Before the Garden 5. It's by a little unknown Christian hip hop artist named Caleb Gordon down in Florida. He's really good. I really enjoy him. He's got a good message and he's very good at what he does. So that is what I listened to this week.
Throw on Stephen Curtis Chapman after that?
No, ew, no, no. Okay, what's up?
Okay.
So
We
what
should be
happened?
good now.
Explain.
I did this like
Explain.
twice earlier. I put down the wrong album like twice.
Mhm,
While the other
mhm.
one is a good album, Proper Dose was
Look at it like you're like actually looking at it. I thought that's what you're gonna do for something. You started like turning. I was like, oh, he's actually gonna look at it. Look at that mountain.
Check that out. And that is their most recent release. I don't know what year that was. That was
How many
that
albums
was a
do
few
they
years
have?
ago. Quite a few. Let me check here for you real quick. Like 5 or
So
6.
okay, so what you're telling me is you listened to the first album and their last album or their newest
Yes.
album. Okay,
Yes.
gotcha. Cool,
There's a
man.
lot of good stuff in the middle there, but
Do you feel like those are their two best albums in your opinion?
oh man, that's tough. Like What You
Yeah.
Don't See and the self-titled was the one I originally had thrown up.
Hmm.
Those are both so good. You're gonna love this. They do a split with Maker, and they did
They do
that
one with
early on.
Stick to Your Guns too, don't they?
Yep, they got the split with
Yeah.
Stick to Your Guns. It's a Loro and Clairvoyant. They do an EP. I forgot about the acoustic EP they did called Songs of.
Yeah.
So we've got
Now, is that acoustic songs of
one,
their own or are they like covering?
2, 3. It's their own.
Okay.
3, 4, 5, 6. And the While You Were Sleeping EP was the one that was the very first one. So that's 6 without the split with Maker or the split with Stick to Your Guns.
Okay. Not bad.
So
Not bad.
pretty
How,
pretty substantial catalog.
how long have they been
Um,
around?
Soil and Dirt was 2011, and While You
Okay.
Were Sleeping was 2010.
Okay.
So
Not
yeah, I
bad.
would definitely recommend them. If you're pop punk at all, that's going to be a
That's your
go-to.
jam. Cool. Yeah, I know of them. I've heard a few things, but I mean, it's one of those bands I need to dive into for sure.
Yeah.
So, did they make the cutoff? Are they going to make the show? Are they going to make an episode?
Oh, I hope so.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, we'll be doing a pop punk series for sure.
Yeah. Cool. All right. That is what we listened to this week. Josh, do you have any other news, announcements, concerns before we get back into the band that everybody came here to see? Because they didn't come here for us, they came for the band.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Was
All
I
right. No,
supposed
that
to?
no.
Okay.
I just that was all we had was just that. So I just didn't know if you had anything else you wanted to throw in there
Yeah. No,
while
I
the
mean, I
door
feel
was
like
open.
looking at the lineup for this, I think this will be the more relaxed of these parts because it's just these 3 albums and there's not, I don't know, it's not like we're talking about the documentary in this episode. That'll be in the next
True.
part probably, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, this
Yeah,
one
well, it's
feels like
later
it's
on.
probably the one that's, you know, this is the chill one.
This is the chill. So sit back, relax as we continue our look of the band known as Zayo. All right. So where we left off, the band had gone in a brief hiatus. There was only 3 members of the band left. There was Dan on vocals, Russ Cogdale on guitar, and Jesse Smith on drums. Now, during the brief hiatus, both Dan and Russ would form the side project 8 Stars for Elijah, where their sound took influence from the band's Sunny Day Real Estate. Russ Cogdale played drums, while Dan and friend Scott Mellinger from Creation is Crucifixion played guitar. But quickly, drummer Jesse Smith would bring the band back together on the idea of writing a new record. This made me think of something from the documentary. So at one point, kind of towards the end of the Lesser Lights DVD, they talked about the final days of Jesse Smith and the band. And I think it was Scott that talked a lot about, Jesse went through a lot personally, especially right at this time up until his departure. And he was a lot of times he kind of was going back and forth, and some of the complaints from the band members were, one day he'd be like, oh, I love you guys and I love this band and I just want to do this forever, and I don't want this to ever end, and yada yada yada. And then he'd wake up the next day and be like, I can't wait to quit this band. I can't. I hate it. I hate you guys, and I don't want to be here, so on and so forth. And I think we kind of see that throughout this episode, and even bleeding over into the next episode, where they take these brief hiatuses, but quickly he's like, hey guys, we should get back together and we should make a new album and do this and that. And it's just kind of like it ends up kind of being this like revolving door and kind of like vicious cycle for Jesse, where it's just like, again, I want to do the band, but then next day he's like, yeah, I don't really want to do the band. I hate it. So we're going to kind of see some of that pattern here, and like I said, bleeding over into the next episode. And we'll talk a little bit more about it when we get to the next episode and we dive deeper into the Lesser Lights DVD.
Yeah, I mean, from the documentary, he seems insanely erratic.
I told you too in the last episode, he just I don't know, he rubs me wrong in all his interviews, dude. It's just like, this guy is just, I wouldn't want to be in a band with him. Great drummer, but yeah, oh man.
He seems like the kind of person that wants to deal with all of the stuff surrounding it, like all of the drama, the need for there to be a documentary rather than actually being in the band.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
Interesting. Yeah. It'd be interesting to see if he was like, hey, we should do a documentary. Really? Come on, man. You're not even in the band anymore,
Yeah.
Who knows, man?
We get the band back together.
Yeah. So Jesse wants to get the band back together on the idea of writing a new record. Both Dan and Russ would recommend their fellow band member, and 8 stars for Elijah Scott Mellinger to fill in on the second guitar spot, while drummer Jesse Smith's friend Rob Horner would join on bass. So here is your new lineup going into the next few albums. Got Dan on vocals, Russ Cogdell on guitar, Scott Mellinger on guitar, Rob Horner on bass, and Jesse Smith on drums. Okay, here we go. 1999's, see if I can say it right, Liberate Te Ex Inferis from Tooth and Nail / Solid State Records. How I do, Josh?
Say it like you're the Pope.
Liberate te ex inferis. Is that good?
Yeah, I like that.
Might have to cut that one for a sound clip. Produced by Barry Portner and Brandon Ebel and the band. We've talked about those two guys working with the band previously, and we'll see their names a few more times too. The album title is Latin for Save Yourself from Hell. Several samples are featured through the album from the movie Event Horizon, which also lends the album title. And I know we've talked about, there was another, like at least one or two bands that made mention to that movie, Event Horizon. And I believe it's got Lawrence Fishburne and the dude. Oh, now I'm blanking on his name. Josh's favorite actor from the Jurassic Park movies and and
Sam Neill. Sam Neill.
There you go, man. There you go. Sam Neill.
Yeah. I've been shamed enough into remembering his name now.
Remember that name. Nice. In 2014, Arthur Grimm from angrymetalguy.com. I just picture some guy like living in his mom's basement that decided he wanted to review albums, and he's like, I'm going to call
this album URL. Was not up to standard.
Exactly. Angrymetalguy.com reviewed the album, stating, quote, just as the change from 1997's The Splinter Shards, The Birth of Separation, to 1998's thankfully non-preachy but incredibly impersonal Where Blood and Fire Bring Rest was huge. So was the leap from Where Blood to so was the blood from where so was the leap from Where Blood to Liberate. Smith, who also bedazzles the front cover, didn't know if you know that or not, Josh, but that's actually his eye on the album cover of
Oh,
Liberate. And vocalist Dan openly admitted in interviews to being heavily influenced by Neurosis's powerful
neuroses.
through power. Is it real? What?
I don't know.
No, I was like, that's not how they said it on the DVD. Don't do that to me. Don't ferry me, bro. Neurosis's
I'll
powerful.
define your grand line if you're not careful.
God. Powerful through silver and blood, and man, does it show. The slow burn of the intro, punctuated by the above quote from the sci-fi cult classic Event Horizon, bleeds right into Savannah, containing one of Smith's best drum fills. Frantic guitar interplay from Scott Mellinger and Russ Cogdale, and some of Dan's most caustic vocal performances, sounding like a possessed version of Jeff Walker from Carcass throughout the entirety of this song and album. The author continues on to say, quote, speaking of Dan, Liberate cemented him as not only one of the most visceral vocalists in all of metalcore, but also easily one of the best lyricists out there. While Liberate's album art was loosely based on Dante's Inferno, Solid State's Decision, not the band's, the songs themselves ran the gamut of dark personal themes, from panic attacks, such as the Ghost Psalm, to being kicked out of the church for, quote, not being Christian enough, like in songs Skin Like Winter, to the tragic tale of a porn star who committed suicide after being horribly disfigured in a car crash. See Savannah. Dan had a way with his lyrics which are often very raw and open. Nowhere is this more evident than on an album centerpiece. If These Scars Could Speak, which recalls a friend who was raped by a highly regarded member of the church she and the band were attending, quote, cradled by a cold floor. Isolation shows his true motivation. Her petals are slowly torn away. Scarlet adorns the snow. Between the building up of the acoustic guitar, Smith's primal fills, and Dan's venomously spitting the lyrics out, this song remains one of Zayo's bright spots, and also evidence their influence on today's modern crop of hardcore and metal bands. These songs are broken up into 4 different parts. So here are the songs on this album. In the first part, you got Circle 1, Limbo. You have Intro and Savannah. In Circle 2, The Lustful, you have Autopsy, If These Scars Could Speak. Circle 3 is The Gluttonous, which contains the Ghost Psalm and Desire the End. And Circle 4 has the Hoarders and the Spendthrifts, which includes Dark Cold Sound, Skin Like Winter, and Circle 5, The Wrathful, is Kathleen Barbara and Man in Cage Jack Wilson. What do you think, Josh, of 1999's Liberate te ex inferis?
It doesn't cut like I feel like at first it doesn't really come off as what I was expecting to be on the heels of Where Blood and Fire Bring Rest, you know. But coming off of a hiatus and them, you know, a couple of them playing in another band, they're coming back together in this one, and all the bases for me are covered for like a Zayo album, you know. It just feels like they're not 100% back in the groove yet, you know. But I don't know, there's not really anywhere on the album that I'm like, skip that, you know.
No, I'm the same way.
Most Zayo albums are just a playthrough.
Yeah.
Except for those first few demos. I'll stand by that. You should just wipe those from the history books. But yeah, it checks all the boxes on what I'm looking for from Zayo. His vocals are just stupid. They are ridiculous.
Dude, he is such a gifted vocalist, man.
Yeah.
Such a gifted vocalist. And then when he gets to I don't remember if it's on this one or not, or maybe it's the next one where he starts like incorporating more like lows or
Yeah.
his lows. Oh,
Hmm.
dude, he just takes it even further. And it's one of those where like, could you even do better? And then he does that. And it's like, oh, you can do better. It's like, wow, man. Yeah,
Yeah,
Dan is
I think
just
it's
so underrated, man.
I think it's self-titled and Parade of Chaos where he
Okay.
starts
I was
doing
thinking
those
it
a
was
little bit more.
self-titled, yeah. Yeah. But they're
But
so
yeah,
good.
because Blood and Fire was mostly the higher range.
Eyes, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Um,
What do you think
yeah,
about that intro?
I like it.
Yeah. I mean it's different. Like you said, I think if you're coming off of if you never listened to Zayo before and you started like Where Blood and Fire Bring Rest, you're like, oh God, I can't wait for the next thing. And then you turn on Liberate. You're like, what's happening? What's up with the slow, nonchalant? What are we doing here? Where's the crazy? Where's the rawness? Where's the metalcore? You know? But it's a good intro. I love intro, dude.
Could
Especially
you
going into Savannah,
imagine
man.
if it was an album of just like that,
Just just that kind of sound.
like tracks that were just like that,
I
songs
don't
that
know,
felt
man.
like Builder that never ever got to a
That
breakdown?
that never got anywhere. And you're like, oh, what happened? Yeah. Yeah, that'd be interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. You gotta make it into the second, third track. If you turn on an album and it's got a slow intro like this, give it a track or two.
Yeah. Oh no, for sure. Yeah, for sure. But it's a good, I think musically it's a good track though. I
Yeah.
mean, it didn't never at any point was I like, this is boring. When is it gonna end? When is Dan? Where's Dan? We want Dan. Is Dan there? Is Dan with you guys? Is he still in the band? Yeah.
I think my
Uh
favorite ones on here were Savannah and Autopsy, um, Skin Like Winter, and If These Scars Could Speak. I mean, the problem I had with this is where when I was listening to all three of these albums, I start like saving songs, and then it ended up being like the whole album. I'm like, oh
the
no,
whole
it's just
album.
yeah.
Okay.
So overall, pretty solid. It's just like I was saying, it feels a little out of sync. Like there's songs where they are like it's bleeding through Blood and Fire, where it's all there. But then there's songs that also feel like, oh, this is a little dusty, you know? Like we've been doing
Yeah,
some other stuff. We've been playing like I'm sure that other band was at least a slightly different style, or they'd just be
yeah,
jacking what they were already doing, you know?
yeah, yeah, it was. I I kind of feel like and I don't know, I mean, I feel like I don't want to expand on it too much because I mean we're gonna get to them. You know, I don't want to dump all our opinions and information right now, but I feel like you enjoyed self-titled and Parade of Chaos.
I did.
Okay, I like self-titled and Parade. I was just kind of like I don't I feel like we're just kind of sending it home here. You know, we're like mailing it in, and
What do you mean? Like
there's some
elaborate a little bit more.
well, so there was like it's almost like half-hearted. And we'll talk about a little bit more about like the situation around
Hmm.
like those two albums, especially Parade.
Okay.
But it just, I mean, I don't know. You can just tell that it's like things are not good within the band, between the members and everything. It just feels like I'm not saying it's a bad album. It's still a good album, but it's just kind of like, I don't know. It just didn't hit me like Liberate and like Blood or Blood and Fire and even self-titled did,
Yeah.
but I don't know. We'll expand upon it more when we get there. Why you like it and why I'm kind of about it. But
You can't
um,
tell me. You can't sit here and tell me right now that Suspend Suspension is not insanely brutal.
No, it's a good one. It's a good one. I'm not saying
Like
it's
that
not
one
brutal.
and Pirate's Prayer are both like really good. And
Yeah.
yeah, I know what you're saying. Like
Yeah.
it does feel you almost don't feel like the passion in them playing it like you do with
Yeah.
some of the others. It just kind of feels like they're sitting there just going through the motions, kind of. Except for
Well, and I
Dan,
want
because Dan always sounds like
no,
he's at a fucking 12,
Dan's
you know?
yeah, Dan's always there, man. He always puts his heart and soul into it all, no matter what, man.
Yeah.
The other thing that may have kind of messed with me was I've been watching Lesser Lights DVD to go along with it, just kind of, see what they're saying and whatnot, and just
Are you watching it
anyway.
like in time with what we're going
Yeah,
through?
yeah. So like on the last episode, I stopped after Where Blood and Fire,
Okay,
and
gotcha.
then this come around for this episode, I went through these through tracks or three albums, and so maybe just kind of like knowing like the state of the band and kind of like the temperature in the room for the guys, at that point maybe kind
Yeah.
of like put that in my head. It's like okay, yeah, this is kind of uncomfortable. I don't know. So would I have been better off without knowing all that? I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Alrighty. Oh no. So yeah. To me, this is one that I put on and I just listened through all the way through. But I will say, I really do. I really do like "Desire the End." That's a good track. Obviously, as you could tell from the lyrics at the beginning of this episode, I really enjoyed that
Yeah.
one. Love me a good musical intro though, from Intro. That's a good one too. But the one thing that I keep coming back to, I always keep coming back to a riff that's stuck in my head from Ghost Psalm, and it goes brown down 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 doom 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 brown down. You know what I'm talking about?
I don't
Kind of in
remember
the
that
middle of the
riff.
song. Yeah, it's kind of in the middle of the song. But yeah,
Hmm.
I always think about that one. And of course, Skin Like Winter, we talked about that in the
You're
last
never gonna believe
episode.
this. I clicked immediately to it. A minute
Are
and
you
53
serious?
seconds.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
it's
I may have been off just a little bit, maybe. Yeah.
yeah, and then it just goes into like that false harmonic.
Yeah.
But
Oh, so good, man. So good. Yeah, this is a really good album, man. I think out of the three that we're going to talk about, this is definitely my favorite, for sure.
it
Out of the
does
three that we're
feel
talking about
like
today.
we're happy to be back together, you know?
Yes. Yeah. Well, and a lot of people seem to come back to, no disrespect to, Where Blood and Fire Bring Rest, or even an album like Funeral of God, because I think you have to kind of put that one to the side because that's a different era of Zayo. And again, we'll talk about that in the next episode. But a lot of people seem to come back to this album um, as kind of a high point for the band. And I
Yeah.
think one of the things we talk about too, where when you get an album like, Where Blood and Fire Bring Rest, like it defined the great line from Under Oath. There's others we talked about before that's just like, oh my gosh, when you think of that band, you think of that album, and it was such a good album. And it's like, okay, what's this next album going to be like? AFI said it about their
Where
album
do we go
after
from here?
December Underground. It's like this is going to make it or break it. This
Yeah.
will be the album they're going to remember us for. And so I feel like I'm with you where it's like it feels like they're happy to be back together. It feels like I mean, it's a good album, but it feels like there is something kind of missing a little bit, maybe. I don't know.
It
It's
just
it's just
like I was saying, it just feels kind of dusty. Like it just feels like they're
yeah,
knocking the cobwebs off
the
because there's
cobwebs off
certain
of it.
songs where it shines through full on and you're just
Right.
like, "Oh god." Like that everything's hitting perfectly. Everybody's in sync, like we're all feeling this. And then there's other tracks where it just kind of feels like, okay, like we're doing the Zayo thing again now. We're not doing the Ezekiel band they were in, you know?
Right. Yeah.
This is gonna drive me crazy. What was the name of the first band that Dan was in?
Dan and Russ were both in it. It was called Seasons in the Field.
Seasons in the Field. That's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and I just feel like it's a good album, and there's nothing that feels half-hearted about it. It just
Right.
feels a little, it's out of practice, you know.
Okay. Yeah, I
So
got you. All right, that's 1999's Liberate Tax in Paris.
Bing.
After release of the band's fourth album, guitarist Russ Cogdale would leave the band to pursue his studies in film school. Vocalist Dan would leave soon after to pursue a career as a tattoo artist. This left the band with three members: Scott Millinger on guitar, Rob Horner on bass, who would actually leave before recording the next album, and Jesse Smith on drums. But this would not deter the remaining members from going on tour. They would hire a friend of the band, Corey Darst, to do vocals. Of course, Rob's still there on bass at the time. He just won't be there for the next album. So you got the four guys there. But once that tour ended, the band would return to the studio to record their fifth album, 2001's self titled From Tooth and Nail and Solid State Records, produced by Barry Portner and the band Zao. When the band arrived at the studio to record, they had only written two songs while riding 5-Year Winter on the car ride there. Not ideal to
Wow.
be like, hey, we're gonna go let's go record an album. Oh wait, we should probably write some stuff. So I guess apparently they basically wrote the entire album in the recording studio. Not ideal.
No.
And we're gonna see that over this album and the next album. And Scott Mellinger and Jesse Smith would be the ones writing all the music. Because at this point, all you have really left in the band is, at least full-time member wise, is Scott and Jesse. And Russ is kind of there in and out. I think he gets credit for some composition on this album. But he's not really there. And then Dan's off doing his thing, but he's going to actually come back to do vocals on this album. And I think from what I had heard off of, what's that?
I was like, yeah, this is Dan.
No, I
Like,
know
on this
I'm
album.
just no. I'm not like questioning. It was like, well, maybe I don't know. They could tell me.
Yeah, no.
Yeah,
I was
that's
just
Dan.
confused because I was like, wait, what? Like, he's
Yeah.
on this album.
Yeah, so it becomes a deal over this album and the next one where it's basically Scott and Jesse is Zao. And Dan
Jesse is Zao.
Yeah.
As long as Jesse is alive,
Oh
Zao
jeez.
they have a chance.
Dan's doing his tattoo thing, and when he can, he comes in and records vocals. Writes lyrics and records the vocals too. It's just I feel like that's one thing that starts to kind of like, especially on the next one. I think there's a few parts in self-titled that I'm kind of like, okay, I don't know, but I mean, Parade of Chaos, I'm just kind of like, man, I just feel like they're forcing it almost.
Okay.
And I know the other thing too that I think comes into play is, remember in the last episode we talked about they got that contract from Tooth and Nail Records after all else failed, and they willy-nilly signed it, didn't hire a lawyer to look at it or anything, and it was I don't remember how many albums they were signing up for, but it was bad. It was a bad contract. And it gets to the point here where it's kind of like you're still trying to fulfill that contract, and you're down to two members basically. Yeah, Dan's still there, and Dan is a big part of Zao. I mean, without Dan there, I'd feel like it's not Zao. It's not Zao without Dan,
Yeah.
I know what you're saying about Jesse too, but
It's
Dan,
a
okay.
joke.
I just want to make sure. But yeah, Dan is Zao. But I mean, when you're just down to like two God, two members full time at least. And again, going
That's
back to
not a
the whole deal
band.
of like, yeah,
It's just
well, and then
a,
on top
yeah.
of that, it's like when they, especially when you get to Parade of Chaos, and they talk more about like Jesse's just like, one day I want to do this band, and the next is like, I hate this band, I hate you guys, and it's like, it's like you guys, your heart's not into it. I just know your heart's not in it. You know,
Yeah.
I don't know, man. But guitarist Scott Mellinger later on expressed the desire to re-record the album with live drums because this album used V drums, virtual drums. Why? Why? I don't understand the affinity to be like, hey, I want to do this.
I can feel that. It's
Bro.
like the symbols to me that
Yeah,
feel
yeah.
really
And I just like
manufactured.
don't understand that, man. In 2011, Stephen Pallas wrote his review of the album for Jesus Freak Hideout, JesusFreakHideout.com, saying, quote, one of the first things one notices about self-titled is a peculiar tone of Smith's electronic V drums. The dark, impersonal, mechanical, thundering combined with the tastefully ambient plotting and nasty riffing of Mellinger create an album that, while more polished than Liberate te ex inferis, picks up where that masterpiece left off in terms of its high creepiness factor, intertwined with well placed moments of sheer brutality. As for Dan's vocal work, self titled is probably his magnum opus. His always reliable trademark gargly screams has more body, and his surprisingly underrated roar makes its first appearance here, instantly making one wonder how much more awesome his first two albums with Zayo could have been had he employed this scary open mouth growl sooner. Amen, brother.
That would
Amen.
have been, yeah, that could have been pretty sweet.
It's devastating, satisfying. It's a devastating, satisfying sonic effort overall. Strangely enough, sitting down and listening through self-titled, it's Zayo's least cohesive album to date, despite being among its greatest sonically. The track placement, especially, is pretty questionable. Do you agree with that, Josh?
What? The track
So
placement?
well, two things. So he says is in his opinion, Steve Pallas, that self-titled is Zayo's least cohesive album to date, despite being among its greatest sonically. And then he goes on to say that the track placement, especially, is pretty questionable.
Yeah, I mean, if we're excluding the EPs from the conversation,
Yeah, don't
I
even think about.
mean,
We're talking full length here.
All Else Fails, Splinter Shards, Blood and Fire, like those are all pretty cohesive while being not as polished, you know?
Yeah,
But, and the numbers, bro, on this are just so 5 year winter, 463,000, then it drops down to 72,000 and lower for the rest of the album. So it's like people
wow.
will listen to the first track and we're just like, no.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember how 5 Year Winter started. Did it start with drums? I forget. Um,
Yeah. The symbols and
Okay,
then
I was thinking it was symbols, which I remember listening to it the first time and I was like, oh yeah, that's a virtual drum. Because like you
yeah.
said, it's like you could tell in the symbols that's where it really bleeds out.
Yeah.
What did you think about FJL, the song FJL?
I
Zayo
don't
acoustic? What?
yeah, I
That
don't think
shocked me.
I saved that one.
I didn't hate it, but it was just like I remember sitting there thinking, okay, when is it about to hit heavy? Because I know it's coming, you know.
Yeah.
Because I kind of go back to intro on Liberate. You know, it's I mean, yeah, it kind of starts out pretty chill and not acoustic, but like just chill and kind of quiet. But it does build to something, and so I felt like with FJL, I was like, okay, there's it's a Zayo though, man. They got to come in with the screams and everything. I know they're gonna come in, and then it ended, and I was like, oh, okay, so we apparently just got a Zayo acoustic track. All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
they're doing some stuff with the self-title um and with Parade of Chaos that is a little bit more experimental for them.
yes, yeah,
And one thought that I had listening to it was that I feel like they do it just the right amount. Like it doesn't piss me off because they're not like, all right, we're doing a whole album like this. They're like they just kind of dip their toe in the water
yeah,
and they have pretty good self-reflection because a lot of the stuff that doesn't play, you never hear them do ever again.
true,
So
yeah.
I don't know. That's the kind of experimental that I'm looking for in an album. Yeah, try something new, and I'll probably like it because it's something that you don't ever do, and then never do it again because that's not what
Don't make this
that's
new
not
thing.
your thing. Yeah. I think it is. Is it the end of the buzzing or the end of suspend that is like the like really digital?
Is it? I feel like it was
And I
suspend.
didn't mind it at all. I actually really liked it because I know I'm never going to hear that in another Zayo song ever.
Yeah, I think it. Well, maybe it was the buzzing. It was one of those two. You're right, though. I can't remember which one though. I mean, they're starting to get like more melodical at times with some of the clean vocal stuff, especially. I mean, obviously with the acoustic track on self-titled, FJL, but then like once you get to Parade of Chaos, I mean, the first one that popped in my head was Angel Without Wings. Um, there's some singing in that. And obviously by the time we get to, Funeral of God, there's a little more melodic to it. Um, but yeah, I would agree with what you're saying. I think they're trying to work some things out. They're trying some new stuff, but they're not overloading on it, right? Probably the
Yeah.
most overload they're doing is the virtual drums. And it's not
Oh
even
yeah.
really like crazy or anything like that. It's just like I can tell and it just, I don't know. To me personally, it's a little off putting. I just don't understand why he wanted to go with the virtual drums. I mean, I don't know. I
This album
would have liked to
overall
know
is
like why.
yeah, like what the thought process was there.
Yeah, but it is Jesse. So what are you gonna say though?
Yeah. Um well, I don't know. The only tracks that really stood out to me on this one were Witch Hunter and At Zero.
That's a
It
good
all just
finish.
feels kind of basic, you know,
Yeah,
the whole album. Um, so yeah, I mean, not, I definitely wasn't into this one as much as I was into Liberate, but
yeah. I didn't even get to say the track list here. Songs on this album include 5 Year Winner, Alive is Dead. Speaking of that title, they were actually going to name the album Alive is Dead, but a album by the Juliana Theory, which was a band that was close to Zayo, actually just put out an album that was that had a name that was close to that. So they felt like they didn't want to do that because they didn't want to feel like they were copying them. So they decided just to go with self-titled, which I think is still a good name. Um, but then you have A Tool to
everybody should
Scream.
do a self-titled.
I agree. Yeah, I
And they
agree.
named it self-titled. It's not
Yeah,
even just
it's not
Zayo.
Zayo's Zayo.
Yeah.
Witch Hunter, Trash Can Hands, Keyboard Cowards, The Race of Standing Still, the acoustic track FJL, The End of His World, The Dreams That Don't Come True, and the finale At Zero, Simeon Simmons. The other thing I didn't mention when talking about this album, they would actually release a sampler split with Ludacris, Ludy, and not the
Ooh.
Ludacris, the rapper. No, I'm talking about the future Norma Jean band Ludacris.
Ah,
Um,
Ludicrous.
Luti, Chris. That album would be distributed through Tooth and Nail and Solid State as well. And it featured two songs from each band, which was going to be on each band's upcoming album. So for Ludacris, it was, I think that album's called Throwing Myself. It was their only full length album for Ludacris. And then the two songs for Zayo was off of this album, which was 5-Year Winner and A Tool to Scream. Anything else, Josh, on the 2001 self-titled?
No. I mean, it's just like you were
Do they
saying,
need
this is
more?
a
Do they need more Bow Now, 180 now?
that might kick this up a notch.
Okay, yeah,
It's I don't know, it's like we said, it's the electric drums that are mostly holding this album down.
yeah,
But like you were saying, this is just kind of a weird period for the band, you know? Like we're about to come up on the part where everything finally falls into place, and
yes,
that'll be next episode, you know,
yes,
where
yes.
all the pieces finally fit. We've got a finished work in front of us here, you know, and then it's just good album, good album, good album. And I'm not going to say that every album is just gold after Funeral of God,
But
you
they
know.
have their stuff together. That's
Yeah, but they know what they're doing. Like
yes,
their sound stops changing,
yes.
and you know, they even
So
go on like a pretty long break there for a while, and they still come back like almost harder than before. Like,
yeah. So let me ask you this then: do you think the unsureness of their sound is tied to Jesse?
I think that's a part of the problem. Like, Jesse has been a necessary piece in all of this because I feel like a lot of them would have just gone their separate ways and done whatever, you know.
Yeah,
But Jesse is kind of, even though he's so toxic, he's kind of the reason that they all keep coming back because he's like, let's do this, let's not do this, let's do this. So I don't know. I feel like he's been a necessary part to keep these guys around long enough to become invested over these, few albums after Parade of Chaos.
yeah, I agree.
So
And we'll talk more about that when we get to them. That is 2001's self-titled. Josh thinks they need more of this. Could have been a better album. They would
Could
have
have
just
been.
done the Bow Wow. With Dan still pursuing his tattoo artist career, the band would take once again Corey Darst on tour to support the album, which was self-titled. Also joining for touring would be second guitarist Matt Auxier on guitar, and Rob Horner on bass would rejoin the band for touring. In December 2001, at a show in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, the band would, quote, break up in the middle of the show as long brewing tensions boiled over. So basically, what happened was Jesse Smith is incapacitated. They decide to go ahead and start playing. And I'm pretty sure Scott talks about this on the DVD, if I remember correctly, that they were playing and he could just tell Jesse was way off. He was missing, cues. He was, out of time, out of rhythm. And finally, he kind of leaned into him and said, look, I don't think we can do this. We can't do this. And so they decided we're not going to finish the show because it's like I would rather not finish the show than try to do this and just tank,
Yeah.
So at that time they all just kind of went their own ways as like I said, the long brewing tensions had finally boiled over. But hey, Josh, that breakup would end more or less being a brief hiatus than a breakup. More of just like, hey, you go to your corner and you go to your corner, and let's all just breathe for a moment here. As Jesse Smith, yes, that's right, Jesse Smith, in the middle of all things, would contact Tooth and Nail / Solid State Records to get to fund the band's next album, which was 2002's Parade of Chaos, produced once again by Barry Poitner and the band. This album is recorded in the same exact manner as self-titled, whereas you have Smith and Mellinger writing all the material in studio again. You can't be doing that, man.
Yeah.
And then having Dan come in to record his vocals when he could, which, if I remember correctly, they said he flew in because Barry Portner's studio is in Arkansas, I believe. And, of course,
Okay.
they're all the way in Pennsylvania and West Virginia. So Dan flew in, and I believe he recorded his vocals for this album and the next album, which we're just going to briefly talk about, which is just the re-recording of All Else Failed. He recorded both of those vocals in just a matter of 3 days. So talk about a workhorse, man, getting in there and getting it done. Especially for not, I mean, he wasn't in on any of the writing process. You come in with lyrics and you listen to the songs and you just try to figure out, okay, where can I fit this in? How can I fit these lyrics to this music and so on and so forth,
Yeah.
So, I mean, definitely some high praise for Dan on that. Because the one thing, again, that we can both agree on that no matter what jumps out on all these albums that he's on is Dan's vocals. They never disappoint. I've never
No.
heard a song by Zayo that Dan was in that I was like, oh, the vocals are terrible. Never. His vocals are just terrific, man.
Yeah, he's always on another level.
Exactly. Stephen Patlas of JesusFreakHideout.com looked back on the album in 2011 saying, quote, rarely is a record's title as apt as its time of release as Parade of Chaos was for Greensburg, Pennsylvania's Zayo. Tensions had run high within the fold. Dan had dropped out of the band's lineup for the first time, though he returned in time to record vocals on this and later albums, and their contract with Solid State was about to be fulfilled. Chaos indeed. Palace would go on to say, quote, despite the whirlwind of controversy, however, Zayo managed to give us an excellent album that could go down as their most underrated effort. Although even current Zayo drummer Jeff Gretz names it as one of his favorite Zayo albums. Other than Zayo's pre-Where Blood and Fire Bring Rest work, as well as the band's re-recording of All Else Failed during the Parade of Chaos sessions, Parade is, to my knowledge, the only Zayo album ever recorded in drop D tuning as opposed to drop C. Can you confirm that, Josh?
I mean, that sounds right.
Okay.
It definitely sounds like it's in a different tuning than like the last
And
couple.
others. Okay. However, though one might think this would detract from the standard Zayo heaviness, it in fact adds to the also standard Zayo creepy vibe, giving the album close to a fast-paced hard rock with screaming or even more of a straight-up hardcore feel at times until the songs dip into classic Zayo dissonance. This can especially be seen in the raucous title track near the midpoint, seeming to musically foreshadow Physician Heal Thyself from their later album, The Fear Is What Keeps Us Here. However, it's not an especially drastic change. Every song still feels like the Zayo we all know and love without any watering down. Scott Mellinger's guitars and bass, incidentally, are as groovy and nasty as ever, and Jesse Smith, while keeping it simple this time around with regard to the beats, still shines on the acoustic, no V drums on this one, kit, classing up even the simplest lines with well-placed double bass and fills. Dan is still the main man with his gnarly razor blade gargling pipes. I love that description. That's a great description. Although there seems to be a subtle electronic distortion to his vocals, peculiar to this record and the re-recording of All Else Failed. Overall, despite the certainly, trying times, this album was recorded in Parade, seems to possess an energy that hadn't really been tapped since Liberate Infernus. Yeah.
The microphone's
Songs on
decided
this.
it doesn't want to pick that up anymore.
Oh, it's censoring me. Okay. I guess I went too loud with it. Songs on this album. Let me try that again. Liberate action Ferris.
Got part of it.
Oh, not all of it?
Eh,
I'm
it's like
being
kind of going in and
censored.
out.
Being censored, man. I don't like that. I don't like that. All right, songs on Parade of Chaos include The Buzzing, Suspended Suspension, Parade of Chaos, Angel Without Wings, Killing Cupid, Free the Three, Man in the Womb, A Pirate's Prayer, The Ballad of Buddy Bixby, and How Are the Weak Free. I will say, I love the title album. The album title, excuse me. And I don't know, man. Maybe I was hyping it up too much in my brain. Like I said, I don't hate the album. It just like, I think with everything that's, going on in the band at the time, it's just kind of like, it just doesn't feel like it's there. I don't know. It's so hard to describe like what I'm I'm
No, I
feeling.
know what you mean.
You know what I mean? What do you think, Josh? I know you've given us a little bit of little taste there, little teaser, but give me the full thing, man.
It sounds like so he's already doing guitar and bass, Scott is. So at that point, you might as well go ahead and record a second guitar part, man, because it sounds like they're just running one guitar part and bass, and that's what's kind of giving it that hollow feeling. You're already recording two parts, dude. Like, go ahead and record the third and fill it out a
I
little
mean, why
bit.
not? Yeah, why
I think
not?
that's part of the problem here is it feels just a little bit lacking, and especially with Dan's vocals always being, this driving force, everything has to work really hard to keep up with that. The riffs are there, like there's, you know,
Scott's a great
it's
guitarist, man.
yeah, the pieces are there. They're not at full strength yet.
Yeah. Is there, so you named Suspended Suspension and Pirate's Prayers, or are there any others that you saved
I
off of this album?
saved the buzzing, I'm pretty sure. Let me see. Yep, I saved the buzzing. Suspension. It was suspension that has the
Okay.
little electronic part at the end. Parade of Chaos, Killing Cupid, Free the Three, and Pirate's Prayer.
Okay, I really thought you were gonna be like, yeah, basically all of them. So,
Yeah, I mean, I agree
yeah.
with everything you're saying. There's a little bit of an emptiness to this, and I think it makes it feel like there's kind of a lack of trying too. It just feels like kind of going through the motions, with the exception of Dan.
Yeah.
One thing that did kind of bother me though is it almost feels like they're using a little bit of an effect on Dan's vocals on this album to make it sound like distorted almost.
So they did that. I think let's see, on self-titled, I believe they said in the review. Yeah, let's see. Ghost Stream is underrated. I just read
He
that.
he
I
just
just read it out
sounds
loud, man.
so much better without being processed.
That's what I'm saying
He
too. Is
had
like
he can do that
I
naturally, so you don't need to try to beef it up.
that's why I really liked his vocals when he came in on Where Blood and Fire, dude. It was all organic and it was so raw. But that's how his vocals need to come across. They need to come across raw because they're so gnarly, you know?
Yeah.
So
And the
yeah, I feel
distortion
like you don't need the
on
distortion on that, man.
yeah, and the distortion on most of this album is just like done very poorly.
Yeah.
Like it makes everything sound staticky because it's not recorded right.
I mean, it's a parade of chaos, Josh. It's a parade of
Yeah.
chaos.
Does that mean it needs to sound like shit?
Uh,
Like
that's
that?
what I was wondering. It's like, okay, I mean, it's like, I don't know, man. I don't know.
But I don't know. There's some moments on this, and we keep coming back to it, but this is just an unsteady time for the band. There's a lot of
Yes.
infighting, so it's not, we're not where we need to be yet.
Yeah, I just feel like in this part of their discography, there's a lot of half-heartedness. There's there's a committal. I mean, again, that all based around Jesse. If because he's been, a member from the very beginning, so it's like at this point, Zayo goes where Jesse goes. He dictates a lot of what the comings and goings.
Yeah.
And so with him being so like from day to day, fluid about what he wants to do, whether he wants to be in Zayo or not want to be in Zayo, and so on and so forth, that starts bleeding over into the members. I don't know about Russ. I mean, obviously we said he went to film school, but like with Dan, he talks about it on the DVD about, I had this opportunity to, do an apprenticeship, as a tattoo artist. And I don't know if Zayo is going to be there forever. At that point, it's like I would love to do music for for the rest of my life, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that for the rest of my life because, again, when it's so like maybe yes, no, maybe so from day to day, you just
Yeah.
never know. And Scott was the same way too. It's like he didn't even go to college, and he was like, here I am trying to like all I've ever done since like I was 17 was play music and touring, and now I'm kind of like in limbo of like, okay, well, I'm tied to Zayo and I want to be in Zayo, but I don't even know if Zayo's going to be here tomorrow, you know. And
Yeah.
so I think the thing that we're going to see when we get to this next episode and we start getting into the recording process for Funeral of God and the departure of Jesse is a a recommitment from the members, as in Dan, Scott, and Russ, to say, okay, we're really going to do this. We are going to make Zayo. We're gonna take Zayo to the next level. You know,
Yeah.
so it's just kind of interesting. And again, I said
Well,
it in the
those
last episode, and I say it in this one: do yourself a favor. It's over 3 hours long, but do yourself a favor, go on YouTube and watch the Lesser Lights of Heaven DVD, because it's the story of Zayo from the very beginning all the way up to or all the way through Funeral of God, and it's told by the members. So and it's very insightful. So go ahead.
for sure. Those I was gonna say those three guys, Scott, Russ, Dan, those guys are a force,
Oh
It's like
yes. Oh
once
yeah.
Jesse is gone, it's like there's no more obstacles.
Yes. Yeah.
And the three of them really just knock it out of the park with the
Hmm.
next album.
Take it to the next one. Yep. Take it to
Yeah.
the next level. Uh
Before I forget again, because I've thought about
yeah,
it a
go
couple
for it.
times. Uh, have you noticed all the shirts that this venue in your background has like on their wall? I assume they're bands that have like played there because
Let me
they're
see.
all different bands. They it can't be like merch.
See if I can pull this picture up here in a bigger
You
spot.
got
I saw I
some of
saw
the
something
ones,
about Cartel. I don't know.
yeah,
I
some of the
feel like I've
ones
heard of them.
I've been able to pick out. There's Cartel, Impending Doom, Real Friends, Bury Your Dead, Hardball, um,
That's Madball.
Madball. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. E-Friends.
Yeah, I think that's most of the
One
ones
man
I can tell.
army. Yeah. Hmm. No, I never really noticed. There's one guy in the crowd. He's got a baseball cap on. He's right next to the dude with the glasses and the beard. I don't know
Yeah.
what he's staring at. I don't know if he may be staring at this guy that's like jumping up there to get the vocals or whatever. I don't know. It's kind of funny. He just looks
He
kind
looks
of
like
like he's
Mark
like,
Wahlberg.
yeah, he does kind of look like Mark Wahlberg. That's funny. But no, I hadn't noticed that before. Mop head. Old mop
Well,
head over here.
did you have anything else to say about Parade of Chaos?
I didn't, man. I feel like we We talked about it pretty good and got our feelings out there. Did you?
Yeah, yeah. I don't really have anything else to say about that one.
Yeah.
What's on the menu for the next one? What's the next batch of albums?
I mean, we're not even done with this episode yet.
Are we doing more?
Oh wait, is there more? There's more?
I was like,
While
you only had
recording
these
there.
three listed in the outline.
No. No more albums. I just got a few more
Okay.
things to say before we get out.
Okay, I was like, I
Um,
stopped right there.
yeah, while recording their newest album, the band decided to re-record their debut album. All else failed. The band would later admit that they did it because they were broke and needed to fulfill their contract to Tooth and Nail / Solid State. Yeah, I mean that's kind of one of the things too that they mentioned with
Part of that
Dan.
7 album deal that they
Yeah, that was one of the things they kind of mentioned with Dan coming back to do vocals on the last two albums. It was like they would call him up and be like, "Hey, you want to do vocals? We can give you some money. We know you need some money." And so I'd be like, "Yeah, I need the money, so let's go do it."
yeah.
Um, yeah, it's just I don't know, man. And they talked about too on the DVD that they hate the fact that they did this because there was no I don't know. It's like Jesse's the only one that was from that era, and they just feel like they kind of did like an injustice to it, just like trying to like slap something together to appease the label, as to fulfill their contract. I don't know. I didn't even listen to it. I might go back and listen to it later on, but after listening to some of their comments on the DVD about it, I was kind of like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to listen to it this time because they just don't even feel like they wanted to listen to, or they didn't even feel like they wanted to do it at all.
Right, but how
So,
much I mean, what do you need to do? You already wrote the shit. You just re-record it and then Dan does vocals.
yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. I guess they just feel like they weren't doing like justice to. I think one of the things they mentioned too was the fact of this the state of the band at that time. Between the members, the temperature in the room, and everything, compared to the band that was during that time, was totally opposite. They were all good friends. They were all together at that time. Whereas now it's like you're down to two guys and they're getting on each other's nerves. And, Dan's in and out and Russ is nowhere to be found. And so, yeah, I don't know. But of course, then the contract, it's like, why did we sign that contract?
Yeah.
But
But
young
if
and dumb, man.
honestly, man, obviously it's not going to be good for your image or for your name. But
Right.
if you're under a big contract like that, I would just be pumping shit out, dude. Like it doesn't matter. I would just be trying to get out from under Tooth and Nail as quick as possible.
Yeah, I agree.
That's probably why so many albums get recorded in like 1 year apart
Probably
here
so,
during
yeah,
this
man.
period. Yeah. Just trying to pump them out, get out from under Tooth and Nail or Solid State.
It's the same thing. So,
They're the same. They're the same.
well, I think actually from what I had read at one point,
Christian
so
Capital
solid
Music Group, they're all the same.
so Solid State is basically the parent, and Tooth and Nail was created by Solid State to release more like Christian music. So yeah. Soon after the release of Parade of Chaos, the lineup of Dan, Jesse Smith, Scott Mellinger, and Russ Cogdale, who would return to the band, would set out on what was billed as Zayo's quote farewell tour, known as Burn It Down and Walk Away tour, which is actually some lyrics from I think it's self-titled album, wasn't it? But I can't remember what song it was. I just remember hearing Dan screaming, "Burn it down and walk away, burn it down and walk away, burn it down and walk away." It's like, oh God, okay. Uh, they would go on tour with Under Oath, Dead Poetic, and Unearth. And fun fact, during that tour, not a single song from Parade of Chaos made it to the set list. So interesting.
Well,
Yeah, with the tour over, the remaining members focused on new projects, most notably Scott Mellinger and Russ Cogdale starting the band Jade Meridian. And obviously Dan would go back to doing his tattoo thing, and who the hell knows what Jesse's doing at this time. Yeah, that is all I have in this episode, Josh. Let's talk about the next episode. You want to?
I'd love to talk about the next episode.
So we're gonna cover 3 albums. We're gonna cover Funeral of God. We're gonna talk about The Fear Is What Keeps Us Here, and then we're gonna talk about the album Awake, which comes right before a long hiatus by the band. And of course, we'll talk more about the Lesser Lights of Heaven DVD. Is there anything else you want to talk about in that
What
episode?
about All Else Failed?
What do you mean?
All Else Failed is 2003.
That's re-recorded. That's we just talked about that.
Oh, why is it? Okay, so it has it listed here with it's got that one with completely different artwork.
Yep.
Then
Mhm.
I've got 2 versions of All Else Failed. I've got the original, and then I've also got a 2018 remaster.
Yes.
And then there
Yep.
is also the re-recording. Okay, cool.
Yes.
That's what
Yep.
threw me. I was just like,
Yeah, because remember I was telling you in the last episode that I couldn't find an original version of All Else Failed. All I could find on like YouTube and such, or
okay.
YouTube and like their Bandcamp was just the 2018 remastered version.
Yeah, and I told you that on Spotify they
Yes.
had the original.
the
Okay, cool.
OG,
Yeah, they have
the original.
like all 3 versions on here.
Yeah. But was there anything else you were looking forward to talk about in the next episode besides what I said?
Mainly Lesser Lights of Heaven, Funeral of God and Fear That Keeps Us Here. Those are 2 of my favorites.
Okay.
And then you said we're going to talk about Awake also.
Yeah, because
Okay,
we're gonna
cool.
go right up to the long hiatus.
Yeah, the long hiatus.
Yeah, the longest hiatus in the band,
Dude,
Debate.
but that was the thing though, is they were gone for so long. And I remember when they announced this album, The Well-Intentioned Virus,
Mhm.
2016.
Yeah,
And I got so stoked for it, but I was also really like scared because I was afraid I was going to hit play on that and it was going to be a big old disappointment.
right.
But they came back so hard. And Well-Intentioned Virus and Pyrrhic Victory, like those are both so good. I haven't listened
You still haven't
to
listened to Crimson Corridor?
no, I haven't listened to Crimson Corridor. I wanted to save that for I'm just gonna keep that one pure
No, that's
until
fine. I
we do
haven't
that
either, yeah.
episode. But
Yeah,
I do really like the artwork on there. That is
Yes,
creepy as
right.
hell.
I get album artwork vibes. I see that one and I get vibes of The Fear Is What Keeps Us Here. They kind of have that same kind of look to them, kind of
Yeah. Yeah, Fears What Keeps Us Here is
filter-wise, I
like
think.
a coffin,
like a
right?
big. Is it a coffin or just like a big cloak?
Oh yeah, no, it looks like just kind of like a cloaked figure.
With like black sheet over somebody's head.
Yeah.
I'm a black ghost. Woo!
Ooh.
Yeah. The other thing, speaking of album artworks, I forgot to tease this at the beginning of the episode. But make sure you come back and listen to the final 2 episodes as well. But make sure to stick around for that final episode. At the end of the episode, Josh is going to give us his top 5 Zayo album artworks with a couple of honorable mentions as well. So I'm interested to see what you think and what your top 5 list is. Because, man, we haven't really said a whole lot about it, but I think one of the things that I enjoy about Zayo is their album artwork, man.
Oh, they have great album artwork.
It's such great album artwork, man. So definitely come back for that. We're teasing that now. We're going to tease it in the next episode, but he'll be releasing that at the end of part 4. So come back for that one. Anything else, Josh, that you would like to say as we close this episode on Parade of Chaos, self-titled, and Liberate te ex inferis?
I would just say that if you're not, if you're not somebody who's super invested in Zayo and you still found yourself liking these three albums in spite of kind of what we've said about them, I just think you're going to be really blown away when we get into Funeral of God. Like, it's just going to be, you know,
Production value is about to be turned up big time.
yeah. And also, like, I don't know, it just feels like everybody cares again,
Yes.
like through that really
there's
long
that
lull of everybody
recommitment
kind of
to it,
being
man.
off.
Yep.
It's like now everybody's on the same level as Dan. Everybody sounds like professional as hell. But yeah, I think if you still like those last few albums, you are just going to be absolutely blown away by the next couple. So
For sure, I agree, man. Alrighty, make sure to follow us on Twitter at @IsSurvivedByPro for news and the latest episode postings, not just on this show, but our other shows as well. You have the History of the Corps After Hours podcast, which is where I sit down with my good friend and avid listener of this very podcast, Eric, and we talk about some of the bands me and Josh have already discussed, kind of getting a listener's point of view. You also have the Red Right Hand podcast, which has covered all 6 seasons and then some of the Peaky Blinders. I'm still waiting on that movie. Still waiting. See what happens. You also have the Throne of the Dragon podcast, which so far has covered all of season 1, soon to be season 2 of House of the Dragon. Currently in our Targaryen family history series in the off season here. We're about to start talking about Jaehaerys. Ooh, Jaehaerys. Ooh. Yeah. Already talked about Aegon the Conqueror. We talked about Aenys, and we just got done talking about Maegor. So definitely come back for the next one where we talk about Jaehaerys. Not a whole lot of bloodshed, just pretty quiet, diplomatic, peaceful. Yeah, getting stuff done.
Pretty quiet. There's conflicts. There's always conflicts.
Right. Oh, there's always conflicts, but nothing like the last.
I want to
2.
say Jaehaerys is the one who outlaws the Faith Militant, I think. I don't remember, but yeah, we're going to go all the way up until...
You're just going to have to stick around and come back for that episode, people.
Right. We're going to go all the way up until where the show is currently in the Dance of the Dragons. And
yeah.
And we're cutting it off.
Yeah, I was going to say, hopefully that'll kind of run us right up to the... Are they still saying June 24th? That's the last what I heard.
Yeah, I think that's the thought. It'll be summer or fall.
Ooh. Hopefully not fall.
So.
We'll see. We'll see what happens. Also, while you're on Twitter, make sure to follow my co-host at Joshua Lynn Gary. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review and write us a comment on whatever podcast service you're using. And if you want to listen to us, see our smiling faces, head on over to our YouTube page. Just search Is Survived by Productions, and that'll have every episode from all of our shows. Subscribe to the channel, thumbs up the video. Alrighty, we will see you in the next episode, Zayo Part 3. We'll see you.